So I will start by asking each of you to very briefly mention or describe some TV show that you have been involved with in some way, and tell us one thing that you learned from that project. Let's start with Lars Blomgren, head of scripted EMEA, that means Europe, Middle East, Asia?
And Africa.
And Africa? Endemole Group, please. Yeah.
Well, I can't say the bridge again. We've done that, even though I think we're doing version 9 and 10 now, so that's been a happy journey. But I would like to mention, I'm afraid I will mention the same title.
Oh, shut up.
Go right ahead.
Because we have had this most amazing journey with Caliphate, and I think it's such a brilliant show. It's well directed. It's just a brilliant piece of property. But also it was a challenge to finance it. And I would say that was the other way when people say that Netflix used us, but in this case, it's a co-production between SVT, we have some local regional fund in Stockholm, and then Netflix. And it was such a challenge. It's not the traditional Sunday night crime, and it was really a challenge to finance it. And I don't even think it would have been possible without Netflix. I think it's it opened a lot of
At least not 3 years ago.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Yes.
What did you learn?
Well, well, I think that we should embrace the unholy alliances if it helps your project, if you really want to get things done.
Okay,
and
good.
That's it.
Thank you. Dariuzs Jablonski is producer and director. He is also vice president of the European Producers Club. What project would you like to tell us about?
I think that it's because for many years I'm making co-productions in art house movies and getting many awards, but in series I was lucky to make one of the very first co-production with British partners and BBC in 2011. Spice of Warsaw. It was because of friendship with the producer from UK, and it was a wonderful lesson because we have produced physically the show in Poland. Only script and director was British, and it was sold to over 100 countries. And I said, okay, it means we can make it, but it's a question of script and selling and all these other things. So from this moment I started to think if we can repeat it, and so we recently just finished the first, I say, high-end Central Eastern European co-production, which is following Bridge, but in 3 countries. It was a crime between Poland, Czech Republic, and Ukraine, and it was many shooting days. It was really well budget with 4 crews and 4 casts from 4 countries. And finally, I decided to direct myself because if anybody would screw it up, it should be me. So I took it on myself, and it's sold already to Arte, to France, Germany, RAI, and Beta is selling it. It's not 100 countries yet, but already we have like 12.
So the lesson really is that if you're a country with an amazing film culture, of course you can also become a television.
Yes, but probably you have to join forces.
Yeah.
And that's what I would be happy to explore if you ask me about this.
We will. All right. Anna Croneman, head of drama, SVT.
Yeah, well, he did it, but I was going to say something about Caliphate as well, because it's just it premiered 3 weeks ago, and it's been an amazing experience, not only because it's a great series that many people want to see and it got wonderful reviews and all that, but also that it's, for me, it is really helpful to have it. This is the first project since I became head of drama, and it's been tricky in many ways, but also about talking about the role of public service drama. Because there was debate going on social media before the series came out that was kind of scary in a way, because the series could have ended up with a debate that wasn't about the series and the qualities of the series, but other things. So there was one side that said that it's going to be, we're absolutely certain that it's going to be Islamophobic and it's going to reproduce stereotypes of Muslim people, and the other side said it's typical SVT left-wing propaganda making way for homecomers from ISIS. So these 2 debates, and they were really it was steamy. So being squeezed in between those two, and well, the management above you, and everyone saying, "Do you know what you're doing?" Yeah, it was a hefty experience, I must say. But I think I was very I had much trust in the people who has worked with the series, the writer.
So the lesson somehow is that if you can be in that sweet spot between where everybody is potentially mad at you, it's worth it.
It is absolutely worth it. And I think it's so much worth it for public service. I mean, that's exactly where we should be. And we should manage to be there. And it's great that we did succeed with this project. So.
Simone Emmelius, of course, we've already met, SVP International Fiction at the ZDF. What show would you like to tell us about?
Well, maybe I should talk about Shadow Play. That's a show where you can get a first glance during the series days at the Berlinale. Shadow Play is a big international co-production written by by Mons Morland and directed by Mons and by Björn Stein, and that project is for me very interesting for several reasons. The first reason is when I took over my department, it was the first big project that came along, also with all the difficulties big projects have. And my feeling for this department was to do great shows dealing with today and the future, and Shadow Play is about the end of Second World War. And, and believe me, in Germany we have hundreds of films about Second World War. But what was different, and that really caught me, was first of all, it doesn't tell the story about Second World War. It also doesn't tell the story about 1945 and how the Allies ended that war, but it tells the story about year one, the very hot summer of 1946. And that gives you a clue how different the perspective is. And the other thing, and that's really that's the benefit that somebody like Mons wrote the book, is it's a different perspective. He's very familiar with German history, but it's the perspective from a not German.
So maybe the lesson then would be that in co-production, sometimes, even when you make something hyper-local, a foreign perspective can actually help.
That's the point.
Yeah.
That's the point. What's the thrilling thing for me doing co-productions, and that really belongs to all the co-productions, is that you bring together different perspectives. And if you have the same vision and you have to talk a lot together to create that same vision, then it's so helpful for the quality of the project in the end to bring in these different perspectives. And it's also so much fun, to be honest. And I'm really convinced that Shadow Play is going to be a great show, specifically due to that fact.
I also just realized now that of course when you're doing a co-production you can't take things for granted that would be taken for granted in your local country, so you have to verbalize a lot of questions that start with why, and that's good for all creatives. Finally, Christian Rank, head of drama DR, what show would you like to tell us about?
I think I have been with DR for 2 years now, and I have had to ask myself the question about how do we maintain the success DR has had prior several times. I think something that I've given a lot of thought about is that I can see most recently with our show When the Dust Settles, and also our upcoming show Cry Wolf, is how that very, very strong focus from the writer's side in the early stages of development, the intensive research they do into their subject, and the strong focus on their subject matter for for a long time before they actually start writing the scripts, how much that means for our shows, and how when that research is done well, how 3 years later when the show premieres, for some magic reason, then they always tap into a current debate that's ongoing. So I think if I've learned something, it is to work really hard constantly, but especially in really being focused in that early stage and finding those subject matters that really resonate into a current debate.
It's funny, it feels like we've heard it on the stage a couple of times already today, that we were doing all of this research and 2 years later, 3 years later, it was completely current to something. Yeah, that's a very valuable lesson. And maybe that's where we should then begin with the focus on the writers, because we were in the conversation with Simone and Frank, we were talking about European TV drama production as a kind of an art house discipline. That one of the things that is different in Europe compared to the rest of the world is that we have this tradition of a strong director or of producer, director, writer teams working together. And of course, there is the big change in TV drama globally, and I think also in Europe, is that the writers are getting more and more room and more responsibility. We've just heard an example for why this is very good. I think that there are different opinions about this. Anna, would you like to go?
Well, I'm sure there's different opinions about it. I just think that the creative triangle, the producer, the writer, director, has been proved that it's a very powerful union for pushing through a project. I see a lot of writers wanting to be showrunners, knowing exactly nothing what it's about, and I also see the opposite. I see directors coming into work in television and thinking that the series is an art house movie. So there's from two sides the complications, and I think we really need to sort that out to be able to make the absolutely most amazing series. Because it is, if the really good directors doesn't want to work with television because they can't contribute, then that's not a good situation. On the other hand, if we lose the great writers to elsewhere because we cannot sort of take care and nurture the way they want to perceive their vision, then we also have a problem. So
the directors need enough space to contribute creatively, but the writers also need enough control not to lose the soul of the project. And then how do we do this? It sounds to me like a job for a producer. Lars? Yeah.
It is. No, but I think one thing we have to remember that this is even the art form in itself is like 100 years old, and we've been doing this the European way. We know how to do this, and we have this way of handling delicate creative people because we don't have the same pressure that you do in the US. But the reason why you have showrunners is that you need to deliver in time. That's the most important skill for a showrunner, to pick up creativity from other people and deliver in time. But a lot of people will fall off that wagon because it's too complicated. If you're a nervous whatever, a delicate person.
You're saying that some creatives are a little bit delicate,
I think it's going to take, just the way it's taken a while for the Americans to understand how we work. We just have to accept that it would take us a long time to build writers' room and try to work because we don't have the tradition. And I think so we just need to respect that we're good at what we're doing, so why ruin something that works?
Well, I mean, the drama production market has also expanded so rapidly. So, of course, a lot of people who don't have a lot of experience, specifically from TV drama, are coming into this field. How much is that a problem, and how much is that an asset? Like, who needs to do what to solve this, basically?
Anyone else wants to go? Denmark.
I think
Denmark has to solve it.
I think a lot of us. I can talk for myself and say I was educated at the Danish Film School. I think a lot of us come out of a film tradition, and even as complicated as it is to do a feature film, it still ends at some point. And often there's a director who knows where they want it to end. And I think with a lot of these, with the explosion in serialized production we see these years, we're moving into processes that are so complicated and so many-faceted that what we learned in film school is no. I think we need to be more articulate. I think we need to write down what we know, and I think, especially for the producers, we have to be really, really good at obtaining that knowledge, defining it, and being very clear about it.
So when you say we, who needs to? The producers themselves, the commissioners,
No,
the
that's
industry more broadly?
All of, I would say us as executives or heads of dramas, our executive producers, and also the producers, we have to be very good at defining those workspaces.
Who's in charge
and really being in charge. And I think at least in a Scandinavian culture, we're really good at giving each other room and giving each other place, and sometimes that also causes for great misunderstandings. So I think being clear, being more explicit, and talking more about how we work, who decides what, before we start a process. That's something that we could definitely become better at.
I really want to do a seminar on this. I mean, having directors and writers talk about it, because I think they need to talk about the expectations on each other. And we have to be able to work together. I mean, that is the good potential we have in Scandinavia.
That is what you're thinking, yeah. You look like you're making faces. Yeah. And yes. Yeah.
First of all, I have very, very easy choice, because I'm coming from post-communistic country and it was different than here. And television was always cursed because it was propaganda, so we didn't want to touch. So when I was invited in '98 to propose a series for television, I said, no, thank you, I'm not interested. So we were waiting till television would give us the opportunity to say something important and something artistic. So from this moment, TV series is interesting for us. So without artistic input, without the important message, it could stay alone without us, So I think I was very happy to hear what Simone said, that this is European series is art house origin somehow. And I like it, and I think it has much bigger potential still to be achieved in seriousness of the subjects matters. And I have to say, that's what I said in the morning, that watching, as a member of the jury, watching the best Nordic shows, I think that this is wonderful examples what television can achieve in courage to touching something which is important for societies. This is European way of making series, and I think we have to preserve it. This is the most important, because the cooperation director, writer, models are different. But what I see in Europe, I see that streaming platforms are coming to Europe. They say they are European. They are even inviting us to make a series in our language, but they want to make it, as a product simply. And we have to keep the importance of independent producers, of public broadcasters, because otherwise we lose European series.
Yeah.
This is
Simone and then Lars.
But you are absolutely right. But I'd like to come back to Christian, because I think what we are really great in is in the understanding that doing film means teamwork. But on the other hand, it's very important to be clear in your role, and that means concerning teamwork, that everybody who has a role in that project is able and allowed to talk, and it must be discussions concerning things needed. But on the other hand, everybody has his role, and there sometimes it becomes difficult, because the role of the editorial staff is not really accepted by a producer, or an editor doesn't accept the role of the producer, and so on and so forth. And that's something we have to be very clear in our understanding, and also in defining those roles. And even even more if we deal with new forms as, for instance, writers' rooms. A writer's room doesn't mean that everybody who's in the writer's room can write what he or she wants to. It has to be conducted.
Exactly. Lars?
No, I was also thinking about what you said. I think that the challenge in TV is that when you pitch TV, most of the time you pitch a setup, something that's really good, the body on the bridge, whatever.
Yeah.
And then
where does the idea
and then the characters and all of that, and the arena in a way. The challenge is that if you have the better the setup, the better the ending needs to be. And there's so many times you get really disappointed by. Well, 2/3 into the series because you realize either they won't solve it during this season, that's the worst, or it's just a bad ending. So I think but I think the learning curve of the business, if I'm allowed to call it the business, it's steep, and I think we learn. And then about the streamers, this is just what I think, but I think you've seen in the US that they have this new, not only to promote new subscribers with content for young adults, they have an award strategy. They're ordering a lot of shows specifically to get awards, and I just guess that within a year or so they will start doing the same here. So I think that will be an even bigger market.
They will have freedom space for the hour. That's good.
Guy Bisson said this morning, or reminded us this morning, that global content investment in not sports, but other types of content has gone up 30% in the last 5 years, and is expected to go up almost another 30% in the next 5 years. Then, of course, it's probably going to have to turn down because not all of these services will survive. But we're going into, like, it's been pretty intense. Now it's going to be completely insane for a few years. And we're already a little bit, I want to say we're at capacity. It's very difficult to make more things. And certainly we have concerns. We're going to talk about this also tomorrow and on Friday in context of the Nostradamus report, but there's a lot of concerns that quality is starting to suffer. And I would like to ask you all to reflect a little bit on this. What are your worries and what are your hopes for the next few years, given the enormous demand? Lars? No?
Well, stopping. But no, I honestly think that, yes, it's an enormous challenge to find talent, established talent. But the good thing is that we still produce, so we have to work with younger talent, less experienced. I mean, it's still the most expensive investment for any broadcaster, but we're forced to work with younger people. So I think in the long run, it's better for us. But it's going to be a few challenging years. So I kind of embrace it and like it.
I agree to that, but I just wish the talent that we develop also can stay with us later on. Otherwise, we're just talent developing for someone else.
Listen.
Yeah, but on the other hand, I have the feeling that the networking we have learned over all the years in our international co-production, in combination with younger directors, younger actors who are so cosmopolitan, who are fluently English, and so on and so forth, that helps a lot. And looking to the German market, there are several actors from Scandinavia who are really well known in Germany, and there are German actors. There is no problem to bring them to a co-production in France or in the UK because they're perfectly bilingual, and we know these people very well.
They can go to Germany, that's okay.
No, I mean, we know those people very well. We are linked to them, and that helps a lot.
Yeah, totally.
You know, so in European Producers Club, we are discussing deeply about a kind of a fear which it could bring, because there will be increase in need for the content. And it could increase something which we observe every time, that commissioning editors very often even in Netflix, when they are coming, they say we're open for outside market, we are open for creators, for independent producers. And then in very short time, they come to the conclusion that they can do it themselves, the offer, and they only need us to execute it. So making us as a slaves, you know. So as we discussed, you know, even the best paid slaves is still a slave, you know. So I think that So I think sometimes not so well paid. This is the issue. Less and less paid. So there must be a limit in Europe. And that's what European Producers Club would like to achieve from European Commission, that there is a limit not only on European quotas, which everybody can do it himself, but also the quota of independent production, because that keeps diversity and that gives the gate for all the authors, not only for those who are the best-selling.
A lot of our productions are part of international conglomerates who may not be so excited about quotas on independent productions, or like where do you draw the limit of who is independent? Is Lars independent? He's a giant independent.
He's independent because he's member of our producers club.
But do you mean this as there should be a regulatory limit, or there should be like a psychological limit? You know, should we do it internally, or do you mean that this should be done by law?
I think that the independence means independence in programming decisions, coming from outside of streamers or broadcasters, because this is the gate for the authors, and we have to keep it.
I was just thinking about that Tony Hall, who's now leaving the BBC, he introduced a word called prominence. That what BBC does should have prominence in society. It should be something that felt important to talk about. Yeah. And I think if you look at European pop culture through the last 30, 40 years, prominence has been a vital word in there. It feels important. I feel with the explosion now in all the streamers, a lot of what we do is also being turned into a business. There's a chance that if production explodes and a lot of the content we do end up on American streaming platforms, it's going to be, it's certainly going to be pop culture, it's going to be there, it's going to be relevant entertainment you can use. But I think we have to be very aware at what are those, in a time where so much production is going on, how do we still maintain those prominent discussions, and how do we maintain a prominence in our production? And it's certainly not going to be all shows, but we need to be very aware that we've actually been very good at it, and we have a system that can give our shows prominence.
So one meaning that has in the UK is a legislative meaning. When the electronic programming guides were introduced, you know, when on your cable, when the guide comes, that there was legislation that the public service broadcasters should be prominent in the guide, EPG legislation. And now there is a discussion that maybe we should have prominence legislation, that when you open your smart TV or something like that, the public service content should be prominently displayed. So that's one approach to this. But I think, Christian, what you're talking about is something else. You're saying we should be culturally relevant. And how do we achieve that? By just being more relevant? Or like, how do we do that? How do we know when we have succeeded?
Well, I think part of it is what you say, that in terms of legislation, I think for democratic reasons, there's a good point that there are public service broadcasters and that they're placed prominent for our users. But I also think if we can call ourselves creators, and certainly the creators we work with, have to keep this discussion alive. How do we create an important discussion? And obviously we do that by discussing important topics, but we also do it by becoming really, really good storytellers. Being able to tell a story really, really compelling, really, really interesting. I think if you look at a movie like Parasite at the moment, which they say can win Best Film at the Oscars, that's a super, super relevant, interesting theme, but it's also just a really, really well-told story. So I think we just have to be on top of our game.
Yeah.
It's also very important that if we want to work with the best talent, we need to be the best partner, and that means that we have to be really good ourselves and very professional. And we must also be able to offer bigger budgets for talent that has grown. We must have a variety of things. We must have a repertoire.
They're nodding, okay? Guys, you see this.
They're nodding at the bigger budgets, yes. We have to figure out how we can do that. We don't have the money ourselves. We have to be quick. And how can we collaborate with others and keep up speed so that the decision making doesn't take ages, because then the talent will go somewhere else where they get a decision very quickly.
Let's do a really quick yes/no round, just and then I'll let you in, Simon. Do we have enough writers in Europe who are good enough for TV drama? Yes or no?
No.
Of course, yes, but we didn't discover it.
Yeah? So soon is the answer, yes?
I mean, not for the amount of production that is going on, I think, but I'm not going to feed for everyone. I think there are good enough writers that we can work with.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, good. Simon, yes, no?
Difficult to say. I'd say yes, we have enough talented or good authors, but maybe we have even more productions.
Christian?
I'm with Darius. Soon.
Yeah. Okay, soon.
This is not fair. This is not fair.
So we get go back.
Do we need all the
What's your follow-up?
productions?
No, exactly. That's the question.
My point
Do we need all the productions?
Do you need
That's
all the
my
productions?
question.
No, listen, these guys, you can cherry pick from hundreds of pitches and pick the ones you want.
Yeah.
Of course,
Not
you find
really.
the one, but for the business in general, it's of course it's a big problem.
But I mean, there we are also at the boring part of our job, is to keep our structures ahead. I mean, we get so many offers for productions per week, and to read them all, to evaluate them all, to re-ask what is really meant and wanted, and to find out the best projects. That's something, for instance, which became very, very important in our structure, and to speed up is a really important point of became much more important point of our business than, let's say, 10 years before.
Let's talk a little bit about fewer, bigger productions. Guy, this morning I jumped a little bit when he said that co-production can be a necessary evil, question mark. So did you, Darius. Why did you jump at that?
For me, it was funny because it means that last 25 years I sleep with the evil, because everything what I did is in international co-production, and there was a time I had 9 partners, and it went smoothly and easily, So this is also the something specificity of European model. When I was talking to big American company, they couldn't understand. They said, Darius, but show must be run by one person. I said, but we are not driving in 9 person. Don't worry about this. It's still one who is a leader, but leader who is listening to all the others and make them happy. And he doesn't make compromises, otherwise we would not win Silver Bears in Berlin. Still, it's outstanding achievement. Yeah. It's possible.
Yeah, Anna.
I think that for people who come from the feature film side, it was like 2 years ago, the new this is the new thing, the co-production. It's like, really? Is that the new thing in Europe? That's what we've been doing for ages.
Yeah.
But of course, it is challenging if there's a lot of partners and lots of. You have to make sure that editorial stays in one place, and you have to listen, but you have to be able to make decisions, of course.
Yeah, but to be honest, I'm against compromises.
No compromise?
No compromise, no. I'm a big fan of consensus. And that means you have to persuade others of your opinion. That means you have to talk to each other, and then you get the best result.
I'm sure in co-production you have win-win situation.
Yeah, Lars suddenly looked very concerned. Why do you look concerned?
No, I'm
made co-production.
I'm brought up with co-productions, and we're used to having a lot of partners, and it's always a challenge. But I agree, you need to come to a point where everyone more or less agrees, and then sometimes you have. But I think that right now, coming back to this with the lack of talent, I think that when we're opening up now to collaborate across borders, and then we can actually get better talent. And I think it's such a lovely example, the thing you're doing with BBC now. I actually started crying when I read the review of this Windermere.
The Windermere children, yes.
And, it's such a brilliant show, and that's it's also for 2 things. You managed to work together, and also the English for the first time are reaching out and working with us.
Before Brexit.
This was a TV
before Brexit.
This was a television movie about children who survived the concentration camps, who were taken to recuperate in Britain.
And the reviews are like...
I think for me, co-production is enriching. If you treat it well, and I would like to refer to our last series, where I decided not to have one team shooting in every country. I've decided to have 3 national teams with 3 DOPs and 3 different casts, and I realized that such a wonderful talent are in Ukraine. I never thought that so great actors I can meet there and check, and this is something which is spectacular, because this is advantage of the show, that we are different.
I mean, it is, in one way, we're like, well, the Czech Republic, is that a big TV country? But of course, the film tradition in these countries. And so, of course, but it's strange that we have kind of forgotten to remember
Karel
that.
Roden, which I was lucky to get for the main role, he plays in Born Identity, and now he plays in Malik film. So we have that kind of stars, and picking up from every country, we can build a team. And finally, language is not an issue, because I realized that Germans are making dubbing, French are making dubbings, Italian dubbing, Spain dubbing. So my language is not important anymore. Talents are important.
And people like subtitles better than before. I always think that we have to thank the Danes a little bit. Your film wave trained the audiences to love the Nordic countries even before we got good at television. Thank you, Denmark, for that.
I don't know if it was intentionally, but
I'd like to ask something about how you're thinking about the way the audience is developing. Armando Iannucci, who was here, in fact, at the TV Drama Days for some years ago, he has spoken about the paradox of choice. So this idea that there's now so much very, very good content. And I'm thinking, was it Armando? No, maybe it was Walter Rizzolino. Never mind, it was one of these wonderful Brits with Italian names who says that there's a choice paralysis, that there's so much content that suddenly you're like, oh, I can't watch anything. I'll just give me something small, just give me something. Or if they commit, they want to commit for a really long time to a fiction. Or maybe watch the same thing over and over again. And I mean, I feel intuitively, we all know that this is true. But at the same, like, we can recognize it from our lives. These behaviors exist. But I mean, television audiences are watching television, so we don't actually necessarily see this in the numbers. How do you see the audience relationship to TV drama changing over time? And I understand we have to be speculating now because we don't actually know the answers.
Well, you can ask the audience, of course. You can do a survey and talk to them about formats. But when we've done that on a very, very small scale, when evaluating projects, people are actually answering that. They like, the shorter format, the 6-episode series, they think that's beautiful. They also like the closed series with no more seasons because they want new things. So
and TV movies.
Yes.
And TV movies, and I think the feature film is going to have its renaissance. It's going to go all the way around now.
Yeah, we have absolutely a similar experience. I mean, your lifetime doesn't double or triple because there's so much more. The offer of series tripled. So the people really have to decide what am I going to do with my lifetime. And if I, for instance, look at our Sunday slot in our main channel, we really made the experience that if we offer their serialized series in a weekly mode, the people won't follow us. They may watch it on the Mediathek, but they do not follow us in the linear television. And the reason is the reason Anna mentioned. I think everybody has a need for a story that has a natural ending, and this natural ending shouldn't be the 3rd season and the 12th episode.
Christian, at DR, there's been a tradition to not. I mean, for production capacity reasons, you're never going to make like 8 seasons of a show, and that's been a great relief, I think, for the fans of your show. We know already that they're going to end eventually. But how is this development going in Denmark? Is there a sweet spot, or do you feel that also your series need to be shorter now?
I think I see the same tendency as you're saying: the shorter seasons, less seasons, more close-ended stories. If we're talking about international drama. But then I will also say, on the other hand, that there are shows. Our other big station in Denmark, TV2, is into the 7th season of the Seaside Hotel, a super local, sunshiny show. They had a share 75 this Monday. Yeah. So I think
it's insane.
So I think we are all looking towards international, strong drama that we can do together. And I think in that field, shorter season, closed doors. But I think we should also be aware that those local shows that build on a strong tradition of local shows.
Yeah, but that's domestic.
Yeah, domestic.
That's domestic, and that's a great difference between the international co-productions and its engines and the domestic series.
And of course, for a commissioner, if you're commissioning 5 shows annually, you don't want to spend money on the same show. You want to do something.
Yeah.
You can't just go. Then you don't have a work.
Yeah.
You know, first of all, my sons, they don't watch TV. For the last 15 years, they watch drama series, but not TV. You know? They don't want to watch my TV. I bought, you know, so I'm a bit sad. But second, I found once on BBC webpage, I found the best definition of a role of public broadcaster. It was written like something like this: not every our viewer should watch whole programming of us, but each of our viewers should find at least one program he likes. You know?
Yeah.
And this is it, and I hope that it will be my show that you will find. And this is the role, and I'm not worried about the size of the content. I'm thinking about another Polish show I want to tell to my audience, or worldwide audience.
We're running out of time, so we're going to have to wrap this up. It's very unfair.
40 minutes.
Clearly we need to speak
you were worried that
much
it's a
longer.
long time.
Yeah. So let's take it around. Here we are, the industry, pretty much. From the Nordic countries and also
size.
the whole world. You are wonderful. You get to tell the industry one thing each. Ideally, maybe something that they have already...
Very short.
Something that they have already... that you wish that they would have already understood. So just remind them of something really important. You get like one sentence each. Go.
One sentence. I'm done.
No, very short.
Okay. No, I have great expectation. This is now a giant bookstore. Sometimes the non-English is front and center, which is fantastic. But there's side sections for genres and niche. Good for us.
Good for us. Darius, very briefly.
If you believe that you have something to say, just do it, and don't make any compromise.
No compromises. Anna?
Use everything you've learned from watching millions and trillions of hours of TV drama, make something really great professionally about it. I mean, make sure it was worth all those hours. Put it into a new idea and use that knowledge you have.
That's great. Simone?
Well, if you really have a premium story to tell it. Unfortunately, I'm leaving after the panel, but Frank is here. And he stays until Friday, so tell him.
Frank, that's very good.
That's wonderful. Wonderful
All right.
encouragement.
Last words go to Christian Hank.
Tell something important, and
Tell
tell me something I didn't know.
Tell something important. Tell me something I didn't know. Those are fantastic
Yeah.
words to end.
Beautiful.
We have 25 seconds to spare, so let's give them a big applause. Thank you so much.